Hi everyone, welcome to this Paris edition of the Zeno Confluence series. Today, I'm very excited to present our point of view on the topic of sustainability. This, as we all know and agree, is undoubtedly the gravest challenge that our species is facing today. At the same time, I have immense belief in our ability to work together and address this issue. As we move to my opening slide, let me start with a very powerful quote from Bill Gates in his book, How to Avoid Climate Disaster, which I think is a seminal publication which talks very clearly around our role and the role of corporates and the government around this area. The book captures two important numbers. The first one is 51 and the second one is zero. We emit 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases every year, and we need to get to zero, period. That is the target that we have for our human race. At the same time, getting to net zero is quite a task. It's not going to be easy. It means that we have to transform multiple aspects in our modern life. Nearly all the sectors of our economy need to transform in some way or the other. But if we understand the problem and develop solutions working together, I'm sure we can definitely win. As we move on, one of the things we will discuss is, we'll just take a pause and look at where we are currently on the next slide. The per capita carbon dioxide emission of the world is about 4.5 metric tons. And as you can see, most of the developed nations emit a lot more than the average. At the same time, some countries stand out for how they have been doing well already. For example, France has a very low emission per capita, mainly attributable to its low reliance on fossil fuels for electricity. Currently, more than a third of the global electricity is generated from renewable sources, and every major economy is dedicated to ensuring that the focus is going to move away or getting into generating electricity without emitting a lot of carbon dioxide. UK, I think, is doing one of the most commendable jobs by committing to 100% energy production from renewables. As we move to the next slide, one of the things that has been very heartening to see over the last few weeks is the way the global community came together in the Glasgow conference, climate change conference. And each of the leaders representing their countries has actually committed to significant amount of investment and also targets for a sustainable future. Two of them that really stand out is that 100 plus countries have put in a global methane pledge. What that means is they would slash methane emissions by 30%. 130 plus countries have pledged to halt and reverse deforestation, which I think just these two items put together at such a large scale is very reassuring. And it provides us with the hope that we are all going to collaborate to build a carbon net zero future. On my next slide, I want to talk about what enterprises are doing to help the cause. We at Zinnov, for the longest of time, have been tracking the top 1,000 R&D spenders across the world globally, within multiple sectors, about 20 plus sectors. What we did recently was look at the top 100 firms, and there is a very clear and secular trend of these enterprises investing towards a carbon net zero future. Firms have dedicated billions of dollars with very clear plans and timelines to achieve net zero. Let me give you a couple of examples. Microsoft has announced that by 2030, it will get to carbon negative. By 2025, it will shift to 100% supply of renewable energy for its data centers, buildings, and campuses. And also, from an internal accountability perspective, the firm already charges what they call an internal carbon tax, which is a fee that each Microsoft division pays back to the corporate based on the amount of carbon emissions that their unit does. It has also committed to investing a full $1 billion towards Climate Innovation Fund. I know many of us in the audience are thinking, well, isn't it easy for Microsoft? They don't actually manufacture a physical product. There is no big energy consumption. And aren't they all just working from home anyway? The answer is yes. So let's look at an example from an industry where I think the problem or the solution to a green future is a little more complex than Microsoft. And I want to talk about Shell. Shell's target is to become net zero emissions energy business by 2050. And all of us here know what Shell does. It is not only an energy user. The whole process of creating the hydrocarbons that we consume is very energy intensive, but it is also an energy provider, which means that the company has to almost reimagine their business from scratch, the entire process of production, distribution, storage, etc. And it is not just a few small things here and there that can lead them to this. What is very heartening is the amount of commitment that they show towards this cause and the amount of money that is being put and the timelines that they have given around this. So what they're doing is they're not only going to obviously reduce the consumption across the production process, but they have also invested and committed to develop many more alternate and green energy sources, which the world can use as an alternate to more of the polluting fuels that we have. I believe strongly that it is a very brave decision from one of the largest corporates in the world, especially for a non-tech business, because many times it's very difficult to balance business targets and green goals, because green goals come at a cost, both CapEx and OpEx. We recently heard an unfortunate news about Danone CEO being asked to step down for what the public believe to have been a whole lot of passionate effort into getting into sustainable practices. So let me, as I move forward to my next slide, let me break down this problem and look at how or what are some of the biggest sources of today's global greenhouse gas emissions. As you can see, manufacturing is about 1/3 of the entire emission. The second is electricity. And then we have big chunks in agriculture, transportation, and buildings. Of course, to get net zero, we have to work on all of them. And we have to ensure that we speed up the cycle of innovation to achieve this net zero. What this means is investing in research and development, creating a market demand for clean technology, and also definitely designing public policy to support and encourage customers to adopt this. We have to really reimagine a lot of things that we do and how we look at them across these 5 challenges. Let me do a very simple pop quiz, and people can, type in the answer in the chat window. Just give me which of the following do you think has the most energy? 1, a stick of dynamite. 2, a hand grenade. And 3, a gallon of gasoline. And also, if you're in US, which of the following is the cheapest? A gallon of milk, a gallon of orange juice, or a gallon of gas? Right? I think most of you will get the right answer. It is definitely a gallon of gasoline. So when something is that cheap and has so much energy, however it is polluting, what does it take to, get people off something that is so easily available and is so energy efficient in one sense, but is extremely polluting? Similarly, if you look at one of the bigger things, and I will talk about that a little more, is how do we make things better? 1 ton of cement production involves 1 ton of carbon dioxide emission. How do we plug in? Within 20 years, our energy demand is going to go up by 50%. How do we manage to produce cleaner fuels and cleaner electricity? How do we grow things? How do we cut emissions, especially when it comes to better processes for just agriculture? How do we live? Many of you would be surprised to know on the amount of building stock that comes up in this world. We actually add an entire New York City worth of building stock every month. That is the and the prediction is that we will continue to do this for the next 50 years. How are we going to deal with this amount of new change, growth, and also reducing carbon emissions? I'm sure this looks to be a very daunting task. Let me, in my next few slides, break it down a little more and figure out where we can start and what we can do. One of the things that you will see on the next slide is what we call green premium. This is again from the book of Bill Gates that I spoke about, which I believe is an excellent metric for most corporates to look at. And a green premium basically is the additional cost of choosing a clean product or practice or technology over something that is more polluting. It's very simple to understand. A green premium on any area helps us to measure the progress that we have made towards addressing these climate changes and understand where we are and the barriers we have to overcome. Of course, the target is to be lowering green premiums, in fact, to bring it as close to zero as possible so that the cost of switching becomes very, very easy, right? And let me give you a good example. If you look at a gallon of jet fuel, it costs about $2.2. However, the same alternate biofuel, which is made from plant bioproducts, doesn't take as much energy to produce and is less polluting. On the other hand, costs $5.35, which, as you can see, is about 150% more. So what needs to be done is investment in some of these areas to ensure that a biofuel is much cheaper, right? And that is the kind of thing which I mentioned that companies like Shell are working towards. At the same time, different use cases in different sectors need to look at which areas, which products, which practices have a higher green premium and work specifically on innovating within those areas. And that is where the audience in this conference and the corporates have a responsibility to work towards and bring down the green premium through our consistent innovation. The other thing that is straightforward to be done is ensure that we are focused on the already zero carbon options which have a low switching cost or low green premiums. A good example is the zero carbon electricity in US. It is available. It is available at just about a 15% premium, and it is incumbent on us to encourage this additional spending in the interest of a better climate in the future. This can also be encouraged using government regulations, etc. But we believe that this is a straightforward thing for us to be done. The second, of course, like I mentioned, is innovate on areas which have high green premium. Cement, like I said, is one of the areas which is still really difficult to solve because it is not only the process of production of cement that produces carbon dioxide because of the high amount of energy it utilizes, but also the chemical process that are needed during the input of making cement that emit this carbon dioxide. So the only current way of there is no clear alternate to cement, just as we are looking at biofuels versus jet fuel. So the only alternate is to use carbon capture technology, and carbon capture technology is available. A lot of companies, including the Honeywells and the Shells of the world, are working towards it. However, using that technology adds about 140% of cost onto a ton of cement. So what it means as corporates is we really need to work towards a better technology, a better way of innovating on carbon capture technology and bringing this premium down. On my next slide, what I will do is I will talk about 6 very clear ways on how we can lower these green premiums and make the transition to zero carbon. First, of course, is innovation. We spoke about it a little bit. At the same time, one of the examples that we have been seeing for at least over a decade now is the massive amount of investment that the automotive sector has been doing in creating and electrifying their fleets. We all know about the commitments that these companies have made. And just that focus for the last more than 10 years has ensured that the cost of owning an electric vehicle, the operating an electric vehicle has been brought down significantly. So that is definitely one of the examples examples to emulate in every sector as we move down. The second area, which we have seen to have good real benefits, is the whole digitization of the manufacturing facilities, be it discrete or process. Each of the digitization steps ensures better traceability, better reuse, and lesser wastage. The third is green finance. There's a lot of talk around green finance. Green finance is where companies and investors really commit to buying cleaner alternatives, invest in R&D and cashing in on the same, supporting clean energy startups, advocating better government policies. The fourth, of course, is regulations and government policies that can help us move towards lower carbon emitting products. Finally, I want to talk about something that doesn't get spoken about often, and it is about how we as a person, as a family, and as a society behave. What behaviors we condone, what behaviors we foster, and what behaviors we demand. Just as in the battle of COVID, while scientists fight to find the best vaccine and cure, we as individuals and societies are changing our behavior. We are masking up, we are being socially cautious, etc. The same thing applies even to a green future. We have to take onus at our personal level. There's a very interesting quote that I came across which says that the most sustainable product is the one that you don't buy. It is actually true. If you look at the kind of things that we are used to, it's a big behavioral shift for us. Even the simplest of decisions of using less plastic, paying the premium for, say, an electric car, or buying from a green store, all of this go a long way towards meeting our goal. In my next slide, I will talk about how each of these 6 dimensions have a varying impact on the 5 challenges that we have. One of the areas that, again, just as behavior, doesn't get spoken of very often is circularity. And circularity, as you see, has a big impact on 4 of the 5 dimensions that we spoke about. The real big emission areas can really be reduced significantly if we are able to bring circularity into our business. And hence, we strongly believe that the focus has to be on renew, reuse, and recycle. In my second last slide, on the next slide, let me share an excellent example of circularity and how the simplicity of a concept can inspire us to reimagine our own behavior and also the expectations from large enterprises and startups. I'm sure each of us has, during the pandemic especially, sat at home, ordered food. It's very convenient to do. However, there is a significant cost to it. In our experience, most of the food does get delivered in plastic containers. They use the not so very clean bikes to be delivered, etc. And this is a huge problem. One study in the United States said that the packaging containers alone contribute to 23% of materials reaching the landfills in US. And it has increased during the COVID times. And we can rest assured as to where this is coming from, right? Additionally, most of it ends up on beaches, on waterways, etc. All of this causing significant hazard to the aquatic life. One of the things that I want to quickly highlight here is a traditional way of delivering food that has always existed in India. It's called the Dabbawalas of Mumbai. Dabbawalas is loosely translated to as someone who's carrying the box. There are more than 5,000 Dabbawalas in Mumbai, and they make 200,000 odd deliveries every day. This system is unparalleled in its complexity, and it has an extremely low error rate, about 1 in 16 million. It has been the talk of multiple B school case studies, including the Harvard Business School. Multiple articles have been written about it in The Guardian, Forbes, etc. However, the carbon neutral aspect of their business has almost never been spoken about. The business operations have almost zero impact on the environment. Firstly, they take lunch boxes from home. Each of these lunch boxes have zero packaging material. They use metal tiffin boxes. Second, they use public transport and they use bicycles for transportation. So a huge business like this with almost a zero carbon footprint, which relies solely on the concept of circularity, I think should be a poster child and a big example for the businesses that we are trying to invest in and trying to create. On my closing slide, I want to just quickly, highlight a few things. Firstly, yes, I think we've made a case that the task is daunting. However, let's just reflect on what we as a society have been able to achieve in just the last 1 century. We have had more peace than ever was in our entire history. We've not had a big war in the last 75 years. When it comes to healthcare, we have made significant progress. The life expectancy is much higher. In fact, we have been able to bring down infant mortality by 5 times in just the last 50 years. We don't need to go back very far. We've seen how the world has been able to combat the COVID pandemic, and how almost vaccines have reached almost everyone. There are cures that that are being spoken about. So yes, we firmly believe that if we come together, we can definitely build a sustainable future for ourselves and for those coming after us. So let's reboot and reimagine and work towards building this out. I'm sure there is a significantly interesting set of areas of discussion and keynotes to follow, which we just spoke about. Please stay tuned, and we will talk about this topic a lot more as we move on. Thank you so much. Back to Natalia.